Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wolverine podcast here on Monday, December 8th. We are not live this week, but we are here as we are every Monday, and a lot to talk about. Michigan has made a staff change under Sharon Moore. We also found out the bowl matchup. It'll be the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, against Texas, which has been probably the worst kept secret of bowl season from all sides of that matchup. So that is officially locked in. Michigan basketball up to number 2 in the AP poll, and they will play on Tuesday night against Villanova after dropping another bomb on another Power 4 caliber team, though Rutgers is certainly probably the lesser end of that spectrum.
They're Power 4. They're just not Power 4 caliber. Yeah.
Yes, they're Power 4 in name only. But again, another 40-point win. They move up in the polls. They have a chance at another big win tomorrow night against Villanova. We talked to Dusty May today. We'll talk about some of that. And then we have questions from our board, which usually when we take them live, it comes from the chat. Some of it comes from the board. I get scared when we do the pre-recorded Q&As because it's only what some of those wackos over at the Ford have to say. But no, a lot of great questions this week. We will get to those as well. But Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey, welcome back, fellas.
Thanks, buddy. Got my Dan Campbell shirt on, so it means I got to get to the gym.
Huge week.
Got to be able to fill it out a little bit more. You know, Dan Campbell's a stud. That was a nice win for the Lions. So nice win for the Green Bay Packers over the Chicago Bears. And we got a big one tonight here. Clayton Safey's Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Eagles. So, and what a nice day for Blake Corum and for J.J. McCarthy yesterday. It was awesome to see.
Yeah, you mean 9? 9 had a good day. It was good to see. Yeah, a lot of guys. Nico was going off. A bunch of Michigan guys in the NFL. But yeah, great to be here. Excited to get into everything. So
I'm actually headed out to LA this weekend for Lions and Rams. The last time I was in LA watching Blake Corum play was in the Rose Bowl. Now he'll be a Los Angeles Ram. Hopefully he shows a little mercy on the hometown boys, but it'll be cool to see regardless. Also, found this out today, the LA Bowl hosted by Gronk going on out there. So some Big Ten love with Washington and Boise State, another huge football game at SoFi this weekend as bowl season.
By Rob Gronkowski?
That's what it says. I don't know what that means, but that's what it says.
Interesting. Okay. Well, whatever.
So we follow up Army-Navy, one of the most respected historic rivalries in college football, with some bowl game where I think only the lower bowl is open, and Gronk will probably take off his shirt at some point. I think that's probably a lock. So two sterling showcases for the sport of college football.
That pretty much sums up the sport, I would say.
Well, at least they're playing their bowl game.
Sure.
Notre Dame is not going to do that. They've picked up their ball and gone home.
Did you see that tweet? Did we talk about that tweet? Can I say that on here, Anthony, or not?
Probably not.
Sure. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. So
okay, go.
There's a tweet.
Go ahead.
I don't want to get called. Look at our producer Gunther is down there saying, "Oh God, here we go." I won't say it, but it was very funny about.
I'll say the one that was family friendly and funny is when they clipped the clip from Rudy where they're all putting their jerseys on the desk, and that's what the team did when they found out they didn't make the college football playoffs. So, this sport is in a wacky place right now. Michigan's going to play in its bowl game. It's a good opportunity for them. We'll talk about all of that here in a little bit. But of course, every Monday we are brought to you by our friends over at Homefield Apparel, who congrats to Connor and the team. Indiana Hoosiers fans, they've won the Big Ten for the first time since 1925, although things are a lot different now than they were then. But Indiana's the number 1 seed in the college football playoff.
They won it in the 60s.
This is Michigan.
Yeah, they won it in the 60s, I think, Anthony.
Yeah.
I thought they said 1925.
The first outright since 1945.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Yeah, it was a long, long time ago.
It's been a long time.
Yes.
Anywho, this is a Michigan podcast, not an Indiana podcast. Congrats to the Hoosiers, of course. But Michigan's collection over at homefieldapparel.com, I think biased, 100% hand up. Totally acknowledge that here. I think their Michigan collection is maybe the best collection on their site, whether it's there's some 1989 college basketball national championship gear on there. Of course, the gear from Michigan's 2023 national championship in Houston. A lot of vintage inspired apparel on there. A lot of great designs. So, and like we said, they've been a big partner for us for a couple of years here now. So shout out to Homefield Apparel. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com. Get some Christmas shopping done. You're running out of time to get that in before we have to start dealing with delays with the post office or with, I don't want to single any carriers out, UPS, DHL, whoever delivers your stuff, they're going to get back up here soon. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com, get your order in today. And hey, when your orders come in, share them with us too. Or on Christmas Day when they come in and you unwrap your stuff, we'd love to see what you get. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com. Well, I have the coaching staff change number 1 on our list of things to do today, but I'm going to spin the wheel here. Maybe go around the room. Do we want to talk bowl game first? Would you prefer to talk coaching change? Maybe we'll put that in the hands of Clayton Safety today. What are we going with first?
Wow. Yeah.
You usually get the first word here on Mondays. We don't have a game to talk about. So
yeah, let me talk about, I don't know, ball screen coverage or something. I know we'll get to that, but I don't know. Bowl game, Kerry Coombs. I mean, either way.
Bowl game.
Yeah. Sure.
Let's do the bowl game first. Michigan obviously heading to Orlando, a place they have not been since the 2019 season. Technically, it was January 1, 2020, where they played the Alabama Crimson Tide. Michigan 4-2 all time in the Citrus Bowl. This time they will take on Texas. I believe it's the third matchup in series history. Of course, Michigan and Texas played in the Rose Bowl 2005, and they played last year at Michigan Stadium, which was a 31-12 Texas Longhorns win. And we'll be seeing more of them because as of now, they are still on the schedule for the 2027 season when Michigan pays off its part of the home and they head down to Austin. But 2 9-3 teams, 2 very young teams. I think when they put the graphics out about this game, or whoever's going to tell ABC or whoever's televising it, it's going to be Bryce Underwood, Arch Manning. That's the biggest storyline, but those two don't directly face off against each other. I think it's two teams in a similar place in terms of you were a win away from probably making the college football playoff this year. You're not super thrilled with the result or how the season wound up overall. But I think an opportunity for both teams, and I know there'll be opt-outs. There are going to be changes on both sides of the matchup. But really, similar to when Michigan went down there in 2015 and beat Florida, I think a really good chance to be a springboard into this offseason and a nice thing something nice to build off of, because you're going to start spring football not too long after you get back from this game.
Yeah, I was just on the Huge Show with Bill Simonson, and he said, I do think it's more important because, and for 2 reasons. Number one, you get your young guys the 15 practices. That's what cracks me up about these teams that are opting out of bowl games. You get these 15 practices, which are invaluable, right? That's number one. Number two, this is an opportunity to show, even if it's an exhibition game, that you beat a good football team this year. Last year, nobody's talking about how the Alabama game was an exhibition game. It was how they beat Ohio State and Alabama to end the year. So Michigan does not have a resume win on its resume right now, if we're being honest. Maybe Washington at home, and they're not that good. Nebraska on the road, terrible, frankly, if we're being honest, in year 3 of Matt Rule, the golden year, supposedly. So this is an opportunity to get that. So excited for just the 2 named teams playing together is always fun, guys. When you have a Michigan and a Texas, third time, that Rose Bowl was unbelievable. It's hard to believe it was 20 years ago already, but what a great game that was, and could have gone either way. In fact, the last field goal was partially blocked by a forearm, but still went through somehow. And that's how Texas won the game. But so it'll be fun, guys. And does it cure all of your ills if you win this game? Absolutely not. But it gives you a little bit of momentum, something to feel good about after you lose badly to your rival in what was really an ugly football game against Ohio State.
10-win season would be pretty good. And it's not an exhibition. This game matters. This game counts. I don't really subscribe to any theory. I mean, it's the same, counts the same as any other game as well. And anytime Michigan takes the field, it's historic. I mean, you're the winningest program of all time, trying to continue to stack wins. So it's big. And I loved Sharon Moore's answer. Somebody asked, you have a lot of guys, on the defensive line that are going to be leaving after this season. Do you want, how are you going to kind of handle the snaps in the bowl game? And he said, we're going to play to win, which is exactly what they should do. They should put all their chips in the middle, do everything they possibly can to win this game. That's how you operate as a football team. Now, if guys decide they don't want to play, which would be extremely unfortunate, then you go with the best guys that you do have that are available to you. But I like that approach a lot. Michigan had a ton of guys opt out of last year's bowl game, and they still won. It's funny, Michigan was looked at as the team that didn't really want to be there, and Alabama was the team where pretty much everybody opted in. They decided they wanted to play. They decided they wanted to prove that they should have been in the college football playoff, and Michigan's the one that wins that game in what was still one of the weirder first quarters in games overall that I've ever seen. But this should be a pretty good matchup. It's funny, Michigan doesn't have that big marquee win. Texas has multiple of those this season. They've played a really tough schedule. They beat Oklahoma, which Michigan lost to. They beat Texas A&M at the end of the season, a huge win that led to them trying to lobby and get in the 12-team college football playoff. The win over Vanderbilt was massive as well. They have the Ohio State game in common in addition to Oklahoma with Michigan. That in week 1, Michigan played them in the last week of the regular season, and Ohio State beat both of them. But that Texas game, they failed on 4 of 5 fourth downs in that game. They drove down into Ohio State territory, I think 5 times, and it didn't come up with more than 7 points in that game. It speaks to how good Ohio State's defense is and how good they are overall. But, this is a Texas team that has lost a game they shouldn't, like the Florida game, but they've also stacked some big wins. Arch Manning's gotten better throughout the season. Bryce Underwood, how is he going to look on New Year's Eve after those 15 practices is going to be big to watch. But, yeah, this is a fun matchup. This is probably the best bowl game outside of the BCS or the CFP games, what they've been labeled as over the years. This is kind of the one you always want to be in if you don't, if you're not fortunate enough to make one of the bigger ones.
It's incredibly important. I think only when we talk about Sherrone Moore's first season, no one says that, they went 7-5 and then won the bowl game, or it was 8-5 with an asterisk. It was an 8-5 season. This is part of your season. I think there's value in finishing on a high note. I do think I wouldn't be surprised if more guys opted into this game than not for Michigan, only because, when you think about, the question was asked earlier today about the defensive line, and, when these scouts fire up the film from last year, if a lot of these guys don't play, the last impression is going to be a game where you played the best team in college football and the quarterback was doing his taxes back there all day. So I think there's value in playing. I think a guy like Max Bredesen, if he can go, is going to go in this game because this would be his last game in the Michigan uniform. And like I said, I think you go into this one, it's not going to make a big difference when it comes to the offseason narrative about either program. I think both of these teams will be hyped throughout the offseason as potential college football playoff teams next year. 2 teams that just barely missed out on it this year, at least on paper. So, but I think that this one would just have a little more, the winner of this game maybe just has a little more luster added to it heading into the offseason. And Michigan's got a portal season to sell. The portal doesn't open until, January, I think 6th through the 16th it's open up. So I do think from a marketing standpoint, a 10th win is important. From a tangible, hey, this is something we're building towards. Come here and be the next piece. I think it's an important thing. Otherwise, you sit here at 9-4 and all 4 losses to the best teams that you've played. It does, we talked about how 9-3 is kind of empty calories. 9-4 certainly would ring as that. So this is I think pretty important. And if you're a fan that wants to opt out of it in terms of watching it or being interested in it, I get it, but I think you'll probably be watching New Year's Eve with the rest of us too.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. Why would a Michigan fan not want to watch the game? Yeah.
Well, I think the issue we're running into now in general is that, and this is the sport has done this. This isn't exclusive to Michigan, but we have now become a college football playoff or bust sport because a lot of very stupid people have railroaded this sport to make a quick buck. And I think that the bowl system is gonna change. I think we're only gonna get more playoff expansion, which is gonna make up for the lack of juice in all these bowl games or teams just straight up opting out of it now. And if you're a team like, I think Iowa State doesn't have a head coach right now. Kansas State, I think, made a coaching change. I get that, but with the way the calendar is set up, it's just kind of a mess at the moment. So I think from a fan interest perspective, I get the narrative, but if you're a Michigan fan, I think you're going to be locked into two blue blood teams doing battle in what really does feel like the biggest bowl game outside of the playoff.
Yeah, no doubt, and people will watch because of that, right? It's Michigan against Texas. People are going to be watching, and they're going to see how Bryce Underwood looks. And there's still a lot of moving parts in the offseason, guys. When it comes to people back channeling and trying to poach your players. So right now, it's not just about preparing for the bowl game. It's about trying to make sure that your best players don't get poached anymore. I can guarantee you and know for a fact that's exactly what's going on. So there are so many things that these coaches have to do and be prepared for. So, but it's going to be fun. I can't wait to get down there. I've had fun at every bowl game that I've ever covered, to be honest with you, when I've been on site. It's an event. Some are better than others, obviously, but Citrus Bowl has always been a blast. So excited to get there. You enjoy it. You appreciate it. One more chance to watch your Wolverines play if you're a fan. Another chance to cover some of the great players that we have covered over the years. If you're a reporter for the team, just some really good kids. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't say in scrolling down and looking at some of these other bowl matchups that our producer Megan is scrolling through right now. I'm not saying that's must see TV, that's must see TV, whatever. I will watch a few of them. I could see Tennessee, Illinois, for example, some of the Big Ten teams. Vanderbilt, Iowa could be a little bit interesting, but Texas, Michigan is the one that really catches your eye, like Anthony said.
Well, and I will be locked the hell in for the game above Sports Bowl between Central Michigan and Northwestern. I think the total in that game is probably going to be like 28.5. So I'm super excited to watch that. I'm with you there. And let me say this too. I mean, no one thrives more in warm weather Michigan football games than Chris Ballas does. We checked into the hotel for the ReliaQuest Bowl last year. The first thing I saw is him doing, the backstroke in the pool at the Hyatt House we were staying at. So
you had to beat the women off with a stick, the 60 and older crowd. So yeah,
it was a good time. I don't think I'll be making this trip, but I know you guys will have a good time down there and it'll be well covered. So Michigan, Texas, December 31st, 3 p.m. ABC has the broadcast there. Let's talk about some of the moving parts with Michigan football and its staff. The biggest one to this point has been obviously last week, Michigan fired J.B. Brown, the special teams coordinator. Not going to spend too much time on that aspect because it was as clear as the offensive coordinator change that they had to make last year that it was going to happen and it needed to be done. They bring in Kerry Coombs, who, again, we never did like a special teams coordinator hot board or anything like that. But if we had done one, I don't know, he would have been a guy that would have been on the list, but you see him get hired. And this is a guy who has over 40 years of coaching experience, a lot of that coming in the Ohio high school ranks, but he was an assistant at Cincinnati under Brian Kelly and again under Luke Fickell. He worked at Ohio State for a long time under both Urban Meyer and Ryan Day. Didn't go great under Ryan Day when he was the defensive coordinator, probably a little bit maxed out in terms of his coaching ability from that perspective. But Kerry Coombs is going to come in now and run Michigan special teams. He's run special teams at both of those schools to mixed results. Been very, very from elite to middling at times when you look at some of the special teams efficiency numbers, but also a guy who I had a colleague who used to tell me that this guy basically had an office at Cass Tech High School in Detroit, recruits Detroit extremely well, recruits the state of Ohio extremely well, and has a rap sheet of defensive backs that he's helped develop and recruit and coach that are as good as any school has put out, over the last 2 decades or so. So a really strong hire, in my opinion. There could be more moving parts, but I think this is a really good start to an offseason where I think you need to get a little bit more mature on the roster and mature on the coaching staff.
Yeah, and it's an upgrade, no question about it. He's been around forever. I remember talking to him when he was, I think it was at Cincinnati Moeller or one of the high schools down there, and about some of his players when they were being recruited by Michigan, and thinking this guy's got a future in the college game if he wants it, and certainly has. So as a special teams coach, I think it's a great hire. So like you said, you need a little bit more maturity in that room. I think he provides it. He's got great experience. He'll take it seriously. I think you're going to see a major improvement from that room. And part of that, of course, means going to the portal and finding a punter, probably finding a kicker. We'll see if they've got the kicker on the roster right now, but you cannot afford to have any weak links on special teams. They had a ton of them this year, and that was one of their major deficiencies.
You went from one of the least experienced special teams coordinators, in terms of being in the Power Four, at least at a program the caliber of Michigan, to one of the most experienced. JB Brown had 2 years experience at Texas Southern as a special teams coordinator, and then 3 years as an analyst at Michigan under Jay Harbaugh before he, got the job the last 2 seasons. And then now you have a guy with over 40 years of coaching experience, as you mentioned, Anthony, 42 between high school, college, and the NFL. Over a decade as a special teams coordinator, obviously knows what he's doing. The recruiting is really good to see as well. JB Brown was a good recruiter too, but Kerry Coombs with a bunch of recruiting chops too. He also has worked under Ryan Day. I mean, you got some intel there on Ohio State. Tony Alford was working alongside him for some years as well under both Urban and Ryan Day. So now you got a couple guys in there with that experience that understand the rivalry from now both sides of it. Certainly Coombs will once he gets a little bit more acclimated here at Michigan, but he will coach in the bowl game. I asked Sharon more about that on Sunday, and he's gotten to work right away. His contract isn't finalized yet, but he is working and ready to go for Michigan, so they'll get that help right away. And I would imagine that Sharon Moore had this in mind for some time, just given the nature of how quickly it moved and the fact that he is able to work right away in this bowl game. So, yeah, I mean, it's a third of the game. Is it as important as the other 2/3? No, but it's important, and it can win you games. It can lose you games. David Cutcliffe has talked about in the past, the former Duke coach, that there were some years where it won them 3 to 4 games. He always had really good special teams. It can be the case. You think back to some really magical Michigan seasons. If you don't get great kicking at Nebraska in 2021, or great kicking at the end of the game in 2022 against Illinois, or in 2023, James Turner with 4 field goals against Ohio State. Certainly what Dom Zavada did in Columbus last year and what he did in Chicago against Northwestern this year. It's all important, the hidden yardage. It's good to at least start to shore that up. And then, of course, it has to come to fruition on the field. But in terms of a special teams hire, you can't really knock this one. I mean, I'm sure there'll be something we can nitpick when we're doing our show on October 5th, next year. But, as far as getting this hire and having a guy that's getting right to work, this is a positive one.
I had the S&P numbers up and closed out of the tab, but I just wanted to rattle off some of the guys that he helped recruit at Ohio State, specifically at cornerback: Marshawn Lattimore, Denzel Ward, Eli Apple, Garyon Conley, Jeff Okuda, Damon Arnett, Bradley Roby. I think most of those guys wound up being first-round picks. And I did ask Sharon today, is there going to be, because it's just special teams coordinator. There was no other designation added to his name. I'm pretty sure JB Brown helped a little bit with the safeties. I'm sure there'll be some crossover, and there could be more changes that come, I don't know that Michigan plans on dismissing anyone, but still a lot of offseason to go. Maybe something gets put on his plate, but there is a lot of, there's a lot of through lines in terms of some of the teaching points between playing good disciplined special teams and playing good disciplined defensive back as well. So in terms of other changes, Sharon Moore was asked about that on Sunday. He said he didn't anticipate making any, and then asked to clarify. He said, as of now, it's not something that's in the cards. I believe he addressed that again on Monday, and really for now, it seems like everything else status quo. This is the team that they're going to go into the bowl game with, and we'll see what happens from there. But I guess just thoughts on where this staff is, and it's hard to say where the offseason is going to go at this point because we don't know anything about the portal, the guys that could, we've heard whispers of guys they might look at, but right now it's all about getting your ducks in a row for after the bowl game and the couple weeks that follow after that.
You got to convince the donors that you're on the right path here and continue. If you want to be successful in the portal, you have to have the money. And there are some people that are a little bit skeptical right now. This is not a guess. So hopefully, maybe they make some strides if they beat Texas and Bryce Underwood has a good game and stuff like that. So we'll see. Juan Castillo to Syracuse, I believe it was, fellas.
That's right. That's the other one.
associate offensive line coach is a huge loss in my opinion. They brought him in specifically to help with the offensive line and help Grant Newsome with it. So I think that's a big loss. If you talk to guys like John Jansen, who know him well, Michigan's former All-American, who obviously played a long time in the NFL and crossed paths with Castillo, he said that's going to be a major loss. So. And he did say today that Sharon Moore, all the complaints about Wink Martindale, and I get some of it, right? I don't think he was by far their biggest issue. I think he did say today that he's telling people that he'll be back. What do you tell people about Wink? He said that he's going to be back next year. So it doesn't sound like he's one of those guys that is like on the fence, or, if he were to get an offer from the NFL or something, would he consider it? Probably. I don't think there's any question about it, frankly, but is that going to happen? I think he's 64 years old. So, and, he could make a lot of money here next year. So it's, we predicted, somebody said over under 3 coaching changes from the actual staff, and we predicted under, and it looks like it's going to be that way. So, which means a lot of guys have a lot to prove next year.
Wink Martindale too. Yeah. I mean, I think Michigan's not going to fire him. That's basically what Sharon Moore said, but he can also leave, because you have, the NFL right now in the regular season, they're nowhere near their hiring cycle. As we saw last year, it was mid-January when he was interviewing with NFL teams for defensive coordinator jobs, probably didn't get offered one, ends up back at Michigan. So I think that's one you wait and see. And obviously the timing would be unfortunate there if you're Sharon Moore, but that's what you signed up for. When you hired a guy out of the NFL, you felt like it was worth it there. So yeah, I think it's probably a good thing. Wink Martindale likely to be back for Michigan. I think he's done a pretty good job. And it is interesting, when he got hired, people probably wouldn't have figured that he would be Michigan's, longest tenured defensive coordinator in a while. Mike McDonald for 1 season, Jesse Minter for 2. Prior to that, you had Don Brown from 2016 to 2020. So Wink Martindale, if he does, suit it up and he's got he's got his vest on and his tight, white shirt and the skinny M hat. If we see him out there next September against Western Michigan, he will become, the longest tenured D coordinator in a while at Michigan. But yeah, I don't think the defense necessarily been the issue. So that's good to see. And Sharon Moore, it is interesting. Like Jim Harbaugh, when he got here, there was a lot of staff turnover, especially early on in his tenure. And then, late you had guys leave because they got better opportunities, like Mike McDonald going back to the NFL and things like that. But Jim Harbaugh didn't quite get it right for, really you could argue 6 years at Michigan, but certainly, was going through some offensive coordinators, was, had Pep Hamilton and just hired a new coordinator. Well, Pep was already the coordinator and kind of replaced him, and then Pep left. And, you had all this stuff, but it seems like Sharon Moore has felt like he's got this coaching staff right, because you haven't made any changes outside of offensive coordinator last year and then special teams coordinator this year. So, that's the confidence that he has. And obviously that's it's a bet that he's making.
Part of me, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Part of me wonders, because Sharon said this week, or to kick off this week in his Sunday session on the Zoom after the bowl announcement, that this is going to be a big week for figuring out what players are wanting to do for the bowl game and for next year. And it seems like this has kind of been earmarked as a week where you're going to get a lot of answers about what not just the next couple of weeks looks like, but maybe what some of the planning for the offseason looks like. I do wonder if you sit down with Wink and go, listen, like if you have any sort of conviction about if you get an NFL position that you take it, do we need to consider maybe just sort of wiping our hands in this situation so we can move forward with a newer guy or a younger guy? And I'm with you. I don't think that Wink has been, I think he takes a lot of bullets because, one, he blitzes a lot. So everyone thinks that he's Don Brown 2.0. I mean, if you think that he's just Don Brown, it's just not, I just think that's not a very fair comparison at all. But because of how bad the offense has been, or even if you want to argue this year, the offense was better. Well, they didn't execute it when it mattered. And this offense put them in a lot of rough positions this year where you had a lot more gotta have it drives because you had no margin for error in these games. You had to win games like, how you won the Ohio State game last year if you were going to win some of these big games. So I do. That's my defense of him. I do wonder that. Listen, if we're going to go into mid-January, where I'm planning for the portal, I'm planning for spring ball. With this new portal period, guys don't necessarily. There's a little more time there. If I had to make a change, maybe you're making a scheme change, and that sort of opens up different guys to bring in. So I do wonder if there are going to be conversations about, hey, listen, if you get an NFL offer, are you leaving? And two, are you entertaining these NFL offers? Because we have some time right now where we can get our ducks in a row, and I need to have my staff in place.
But what is Wink supposed to say though? Because he won't have an offer.
That's
the same thing
again. That's the conversation that I think.
And he's under contract, right, for one more year.
Yeah. So you fire him if
you're just going to eat the contract.
It's not a firing. It's not
right. Regardless, you'd still have to pay him. And so,
which would be a firing, unless he walked away and left the money on the
So-
table, which no one in their right mind would do if they want to keep coaching. And he's not that old; he's only 62 years old. Basically, Jim Harbaugh is going to turn 62 on December 23rd. A great day to have a birthday. So you compare those two guys. I think they both have a lot of coaching left in them.
Just having the conversation. I'm with you guys. I don't think that's of the things that they need to pony up and address. If you really want to get down to it. Which I'm not going to here. I don't think Wink Martindale's even on the top 5 of that list. So, any other thoughts from Sharon Moore's press conference today?
Not really. Didn't see the work jacket, which was fine with me. You know what? That was a little bit gimmicky. So you don't learn a ton from Sharon Moore press conferences, although he did mention that they were, having conversations about bringing Justice Haynes back, which is what we reported a while ago. He did say he wanted Rod Moore and Mikey Keene back for a 5th year or 6th year in, I think, both of their cases, if I'm not mistaken. So, which we've kind of been alluding to. So that would be pretty exciting because having Rod Moore back there healthy for one more year would be an absolutely huge boost to that secondary. So, which was up and down all year. Remember at the beginning of the year when people were skewering me about you saying, "Oh, this isn't the deepest, most proven safety room," and everybody's like, "It's loaded." And I'm like, "I don't think it's loaded," and kind of got crapped on there a little bit. It certainly didn't prove to be loaded. So you need Rod Moore back there, guys. So it'd be fun to have him back.
It would be absolutely massive, and it would be massive if you could get Mikey Keene back, because a healthy Mikey Keene is what you thought you were going to get last year, and it was a pretty good pickup. Knowing that you were going to have Bryce Underwood, so it'd be the same exact thing, except he's got a year in this system. I know he played for Chip Lindsey back in 2022 at Central Florida, but now he's here at Michigan, more familiar as a backup quarterback, somebody who could, obviously if you're him, you're thinking you're competing for the job, but that would be big. But Rod Moore is, just a difference maker when he's healthy. He's an elite player. He's as good as it gets, and probably as good as it's been at Michigan, and right up there with the top tier that's ever played the position at Michigan. So that would be big. It is concerning, obviously, that he hasn't been able to stay healthy, that he re-aggravated the knee this year. You would hope that maybe the time between now and next season would serve him well and whatever he needs to do to get better. But yeah, if I were him, wouldn't you think that playing in college would help your stock? I don't know that you're draftable right now, just given you haven't played a lot of football. It's unfortunate. I hate it for him, but it's just the reality right now. So that'd be big, man. I mean, Rod, he comes back. He wasn't even fully healthy. And the plays he made, I know he had an impact against Nebraska, but especially in that second game back against Wisconsin, sniffing out a reverse, a trick play, having the interception. It's just it felt like instinct for him, even though he hadn't played in so long, didn't show that level of rust. So it would be big to have him back. And obviously Justice Haynes, less riding on that than maybe you would otherwise expect, given how good of a player he is. But you have Jordan Marshall, Savion Hyder as a true freshman coming in. You would obviously have to pay Justice Haynes quite a bit, and resources aren't necessarily unlimited. So maybe that money could be spent elsewhere, although you're never going to turn down a talent like Justice Haynes if he does want to return. So a lot of interesting stuff on that regard and what this roster could look like, and then loading up the money cannons for the transfer portal right after New Year's.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I'll just say if Justice Haynes wants to come back, if Justice Haynes wants to come back, I know Jordan Marshall's great, and Savion Hyder we think is going to be really good, probably sooner rather than later, but you take the bird in hand and you get that guy back. this team sorely lacked depth and offensive playmakers this year. So if you have a guy who's arguably your best one that wants to come back, and you don't have to, I mean, it's going to cost money, but you don't have to break the bank to do it. 1,000%. So
who would you guys rather have back between Rod or Justice Haynes?
I don't believe in a no-win scenario. We've already had this conversation. Both. I like them both.
But if I
had to choose, it's probably Rod, because if Rod doesn't come back, then I think they probably need a portal for a safety. So
yeah, I know.
Do we know what happened to Mason Curtis yet, by the way?
I'm not sure.
No.
It didn't look good.
Today, but yeah, we'll ask.
Did not look good.
If we can do a little dig on that one.
Okay. That's football for now. We'll see what happens this week. They say it's a big week in terms of opt-outs and decisions and things like that. So we'll see what things look like later on this week on that front. Moving to basketball now. Michigan is not the number one team in the country just yet. That distinction goes to Arizona, but it is still the number one team on KenPom after a 101-60 win over Rutgers on Saturday. Let me just say this about Rutgers. You guys sort of dogged them earlier. I thought they competed about as well as Gonzaga did in that game on Saturday. So progress there for Steve Pikiell.
And as well as Kentucky did on Friday against Gonzaga.
Yeah. Just incredibly impressive. I think we all know they're not going to win by 30 or 40 points every night out. At this point, if they only beat a team by 20, people are probably going to be sort of pissed about that. But this is a team that I think is developing its identity of never, like the championship mentality of never being satisfied. They could win by 40 and be mad they didn't win by 50. They could win by 10 and be mad they didn't win by 20. I think this is going to be that type of team. And, there's not a whole lot there is a lot to pull out of a game against Rutgers, but you just continue to be incredibly impressed. We talked to Dusty May on Monday, and it's quick turnaround. You get Villanova on Tuesday night, but this is a team that, they don't want this to be the peak of their season, but they certainly they're now nitpicking, it seems like, to look for things that they need to improve on. And they know there are scenarios that are going to come up throughout the year that they aren't quite ready for yet. And they're maybe a little advanced in that regard of starting to prepare for that. But I think this has been an incredibly affirming 2 weeks for how good this basketball team is and will be. And
it happened so quickly, how quickly they flipped that switch from, man, it's like Dusty May said when I asked him about peaking at the wrong time, the cliche. And I said, do you really believe in that? And he goes, it's better than being terrible. 3 weeks ago, we were terrible, right? Everybody was saying, oh, you can barely beat Wake Forest and so on and so forth. Now you're beating really good teams by 40 points and bad teams by 40 points. You're beating everybody by 40 points, and that's not going to continue. It's not realistic to say that they're going to run the table. There are going to be some ups and downs. But what really excited me was when I asked him, what does it look like? He said, because we're already preparing for teams that are going to approach us differently and play to some of our potential deficiencies. In other words, maybe get into our backup guards, right? With LJ Kaysen maybe having to run the point at some points and things like that, or making it a little bit tougher for them to get it to their big men where they're going to have to win defensively. And he said they were watching basketball games all weekend and texting each other. We're going to have to be prepared for this when we play this team in January, for example. I'm sure one of them was Michigan State, right? Who's going to try to get in your grill and bully you around, and we're going to have to prepare for that. And I asked him what that looked like, and he said, maybe taking 20 minutes into a practice when we have downtime to prepare for that instead of waiting for a 2-day crash course for an exam before a game. So everything he says, every answer to every question is spot on, fellas, to the point that I'm overwhelmed by and just so impressed by everything he's done and the way he runs his program. So also love it when people continue to take shots at them for going to the portal passive aggressively, whether it's in a press conference or in a subtweet or something like that. He doesn't give a shit, and nor should he. It's like, okay, we're doing this. Everything's above board. We're recruiting guys that fit our system, and everybody is so bought in. That's the reason our team is so good. Yeah, you have programs that have paid for teams that have fallen apart spectacularly. They still need to be outstandingly coached. This one is. Dusty May's the real deal, fellas.
What were you supposed to do when you had no roster when you got here? Like, he's
Right.
had to rebuild this thing, and it's
How
amazing.
dare you try to better your team, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, they finished top 10 last year. Well, why would you knock whatever process they use? They finished 10th in the country, and now you're 8-0. You had 8 wins 2 years ago under Juwan Howard. So it was, I mean, this turnaround is pretty incredible, but they just keep shellacking teams. My brother David, keeps saying it after all these games. It doesn't even, like, every opponent looks the same. It's just the same formula. Look at the stats: the 2-point offense, the 2-point defense. When they're hitting their shots, they win by 40. Coincidentally, they've been hitting their shots the last 4 games, double-digit threes in all of them, and you're destroying teams. You're challenging calls on out-of-bounds calls up 30 points late in the game. The staff is up in arms on the bench when they didn't get into their press quick enough after scoring up 40 in this game, which I jotted a note down during the game, like just watching Justin Joyner, who had the scout and all them, or get up there, and get on your guy after a make, after I think it was Roddy Gale's dunk, which was kind of created by getting a steal off the press anyway. So they're working on things in second halves of Big Ten games. It's stuff you just don't see, and they can be ahead of the curve in that sense. Chris, to your point about, being able to prepare for other teams, especially when you had that 9-day break after the Vegas trip, they were able to watch, the other Big Ten teams and what they're up against last week. So it's all kind of ahead of schedule, not only in Dusty May's tenure at Michigan, but also this season. It feels like even Roddy Gale said it after the game on Saturday. He didn't think they'd be this good defensively this fast. He thought they had the upside, but the fact that they're number 1 in the country in adjusted defense, they're number 11 in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, really, really good stuff. And the stat of the game I love the most from the Rutgers game is Michigan had 25 layups or dunks, and Rutgers had 24 made field goals overall. I mean, you pretty much can't lose. You can't lose really if you do that, unless there's a ton of free throws or Rutgers hit a ton of threes. But Dusty May said something I thought was 2 things really interesting after the game on Saturday. He said, 1, we have 2 of everything. So, one guy gets hurt, one guy's in foul trouble, whatever. I mean, they're trying to find ways to get Will Cheddar and the guys in the back of the rotation some minutes. So they have 2 of everything. And he said, we're just trying to, I forget the exact wording, but basically prevent losing, by doing a bunch of these little things well, so that even when we're not hitting our shots, which those games are going to happen, but even when we're not, we're still going to be able to win, like we saw against Wake Forest, TCU, and things like that. So now the turnovers have gone away. You're seeing improvement, even though this team looked like, certainly a couple weeks ago that, out in Vegas, that they couldn't improve much more, but you're seeing it even in some of the small ways.
Part of it too is that, you felt like when they built this roster that they sort of, I don't want to say like fail proofed it, but they just had so much optionality in terms of how they could build it out. And now these guys have sort of coalesced in a way that's probably surprised them, given how little time they had with this full group, with injuries and illness and the lead up that, now you're sort of, like you said, Clay, you're trying to find things that you can correct ahead of time. So you do sort of fail proof your season. Now, a couple things here. They're not going to go undefeated. Like, that would be stunning. It has a 1.9.
It's the second time Clay, by the way, has done that. Like, I don't know.
It's hard to go undefeated, but they might have a chance.
They don't just have a chance. They have a 1.9% chance, which is, I mean, at this point in the season, that's a pretty big number on December 8th. On KenPom, they do not have a game with less than 86% potential win expectancy until they play at Michigan State on January 30th, where it's a 62% for them. And then the Duke game is 60% in February. Purdue is 54%. So there are a couple coin flip games in there, and there are going to be a couple games where they're probably projected to hammer a team and it's closer than it needs to be. Like, it's still, a 35 plus game college basketball season. This team is ahead of schedule, and there's a lot of runway here where they don't play a team like Villanova's number 35 on KenPom. They'll play USC, who's 32 on January 2nd. They don't play a team inside the top 25 until January 10th when they play Wisconsin at home. And then the next one inside the top 25 as of now would be that Michigan State game. So there's a lot of runway here to run this up. And if they might not be number one this week, but I feel like this is something that's percolating and will happen eventually. But another stat for you. Apparently, this is a very consequential week of the AP poll. The eventual national champion has appeared in the top 12 of the Week 6 AP poll every year since the 2003-2004 season. Your AP top 12 this week: Arizona, Michigan, Duke, Iowa State, fresh off punking Purdue in their own building, UConn, Purdue, Houston, Gonzaga, Michigan State, BYU, Louisville, Alabama. So history says that the national champion will come out of that group, and Michigan is not just firmly in it, they are one of the top 2 teams in it. So you have to feel pretty good about where they stand at this point in the season.
That's an understatement. And you're starting to see guys elevate their games in other ways too, like Elliot Cadeau, when Dusty May talked about him being an elite defender, something that RM Hoops 1, Jeff Schiller, noticed a few weeks ago. He's really getting in the guys' grills. They're going to be bigger guards that try to back him down, but he is a pest, guys, and it is fun to watch him on that end. All these guys are so into whatever they can do to help the team win if they're not on the floor. I think he had a 9 assist and 0 turnover game, if I'm not mistaken, against Rutgers or something like that. It was unbelievable. So all these guys care about is winning, and it's fun to watch. Roddy Gale, his improvement over last year, because he's not trying to do too much anymore. He's picking his spots. When he's driving baseline is when he's at his best, and when he's in transition, frankly, is when he's at his best, not when he's trying to do things between 3 guys and things like that. And he's making better decisions with the ball. So fun to watch, guys. I love this team. Getting to know the personalities of these guys. It's just a blast. I can't believe that we get to cover these guys on a daily basis.
And Morez Johnson is just unstoppable at times. Like they all have, they have a stretch. I was rewatching the game last night. They all, it feels like you go in little stretches of, okay, this is the Morez Johnson 3 minutes, where he takes over, and then Yaxel Lendeborg takes over, and then Elliot Cadeau just driving the whole thing throughout the game. He did have 9 assists and no turnover. So, it doesn't really get a ton better than that. And then you had your LJ Kaysen spurt, just all these different guys contributing in different ways. And Roddy Gale, spot on. He is impacting winning in a lot of different ways. He's getting loose balls. He pushes the ball until you stop it and sees if he can kind of just get in a crevice and lay it in or find somebody else. He had the dump off to Morez Johnson for the dunk late in the game. It's really impressive to watch this team, kind of come together. And, I feel like too, it's just gotten smoother and smoother by the game too, the way they've approached offense as well. And you look at it, like we talked about it a few weeks ago, and Dusty May said on his Monday press conference before the Middle Tennessee game, he said, that the efficiency's there from that big lineup, which are starting now and started since game 2, but the efficiency there, but it's ugly on offense. It's so good on defense though, that, still like +4 net rating, and you'll take that every day of the week. Now the offense is elite, and the 86th percentile in the country in offensive efficiency with those 3 players on the floor at the same time. Yaxel Lendeborg, Adai Mara, and Morez Johnson, as well as 100th percentile on defense. So it's come together, and it doesn't look so ugly anymore. It is easy on the eyes, as Dusty May would say. So they just made strides in a lot of those areas, and you're seeing guys kind of fit into the roles, but it's also kind of a role, a team without roles in a way too, because everyone can do a little bit of everything.
It's positionless basketball and a role-less roster. So it's a good spot to be in. Let's move ourselves into questions here to end the show. And I want to, just as a segue, I'll take a basketball question here from our guy Sasquatch616, who says, I assume your predictions for Michigan basketball could have changed due to how they've been playing recently. If you had to predict, what is their final record and how far do they go in the tournament?
Wow. I'm still 4 or 5 losses overall. And it's just so hard, guys, to go through a season. When do they play at Oregon? I think they play at Oregon at some point. There's some of those long trips are tough. You just never know. And But the ceiling is national championship. There's no question about it. It's hard to get to the Final Four. I would predict that they would get to the Elite Eight, and then after that, certainly a possibility.
The Oregon trip has not come soon enough, because right now would be exactly when you want to get Oregon. They've lost 5 in a row here, but
January 14th they head to Washington, and the 17th they will play at Oregon.
And there are no guarantees when you go out west, even as bad as those teams might be.
In Washington, I like that Washington team. They're going to come together. They have a ton of of talent on that roster. So, it is like, obviously the 1.9% chance is kind of crazy. It's even that high. In 2021, when Michigan was undefeated pretty late in the year, and I know it was a weird season. Obviously, that Michigan team was really good. People were talking about undefeated, and then they go to Minnesota and lost a game that you didn't really see it coming. But then, it just happens, right? Guys get it, just missed a shot here or there. You go cold and something doesn't go your way. There's a bounce. I mean, look at the Minnesota game last year, right? You didn't expect that at all. And then next thing you know, Garcia hits a shot, to win the game. So things are going to happen throughout the year. You probably want some adversity. To be quite honest with you. So, I'll say, probably 4 or 5 losses, something like that. In conference, though, I could see them going 17-3. I think, is that what Michigan State ended at as the champion last year? And I think that Michigan's a better team, but you have, Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State look really, really good again. So it's possible you drop some of those, and the schedule's not overly favorable. You go at Purdue, you have to go at Illinois. And you don't get them at home. So I'll say Michigan, has a few losses at the end of the year and wins the national championship.
There's going to be a stretch at some point this year where they lose, 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 or something like that. And then people will be taking the question, probably on a Monday night show, will take a question. Did this team peak too early, or have they lost it? It's going to happen at some point. Final Four's in Indy this year. We spent a lot of time down there. I kind of feel like we might be going back, but we'll see. I don't have a record prediction, but it falls in line with what you guys would say. Ken Palm has them at 28-3. Just to be different, I'll say 27-4. Why not?
It's pretty casual gloss over of my natty pick, but it's okay. There we go.
You're known as the board optimist. You finished second to more natties, so that should tell you.
The board optimist that had Michigan with the widest margin of defeat against Ohio State a couple weeks ago.
We all have our thing. We all have our thing we hang our hat on. So
right.
We'll take it. I respect it. It's just one team against 68.
I wouldn't, but like if you have to pick one, I guess is my point. I would always.
If I have to pick one, nobody in college basketball right now is playing better than Michigan. There's not.
Right.
The AP, those. No offense to any AP voters, you have no balls. That's
why would they take offense to that?
I don't know. I'm just saying, like 3 40-point wins in 4 nights, and a 30-point win being the outlier.
Right now. Absolutely.
I think it's pretty clear, and the analytics agree. So, but we can't punish anyone who hasn't lost yet. Whatever. Watch the games. Anyways, this is from 2HF5 Forney B. He says, how confident are we that Michigan will be a player for a big-time portal receiver? It feels like we took a step back with the results of the Ohio State game.
I was very confident initially, and if the money's there, then I'm still confident, even though they only threw 5 times in the first half against Ohio State. But like I said, there are a lot of moving parts here. So they've got some things that have to come together here in the offseason, things that they have to weather a little bit. And if that's the case and they can do that, then I'm pretty confident that they'll bring in at least 1 and maybe 2.
Yeah, I think they'll get some good ones. I wonder, teams are retaining their top talent, but it does seem like receiver is a spot where there are some talented players that enter the portal. I don't know that they're like top in the country. Those might need to be homegrown, but if you get some really good ones and Andrew Marsh becomes one of the better ones in the Big Ten next season, then, that could be a good formula. So yeah, I think they knew before the season that for next season, they were going to need more. And really, I'm sure they wish they could have gotten more this season. Donovan McCulley was just okay as like as your kind of outside receiver that played almost every snap. But just wasn't quite dynamic enough. But with the combination of Bryce getting better next season and having better receiver play, I mean, there'll be no excuses at least next season if the pass game isn't much better.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think they need to go bring a name brand guy, though, if they can. I mean, hell yeah, I'm all for it. But I think you need to get one high-end contributor and another guy who can start. And then if you have that with Andrew Marsh, we have another question coming up about what this team needs to do or what Sherrod needs to do to make this a playoff team. I think you need to make your offense much harder to defend. And you don't do that by, having 2 to 3 really good running backs and you're trying to run into loaded boxes and you put your quarterback, put these training wheels on him. I don't think you're able to do that. So I think that they need to get, and it could be a tight end too. I'm not super impressed with that room, despite being quote unquote one of the deepest positions on the roster. So I think you need 2 impact pass catchers and another guy who you have no issue sticking out there either. This is that question. Wildy20 says, what are the top 3 things Sherrod needs to fix to make the playoffs next year?
Defensive line, need another receiver or / tight end. Need some help in the secondary. They need a lot of help in a lot of different places, frankly. And we didn't even talk about the punting and the kicking. So, but defensive line is where it starts for me. We've seen in the last 3 years, 4 years before this, that is a difference-making position at this level. And when you have difference makers there, it just matters a ton. So I think there's good young talent on the offensive line if it is coached up effectively. Underwood needs more receivers to throw to, and they need a little bit more help in the secondary, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. What's the most important things in college football to win? One of them is having a really good quarterback. I mean, number 2 on the list may be your offensive line, because I think it's just so important. It's about 50%, almost 50, and then the way Michigan plays, sometimes more than 50% of the players that are on the field at one time when you're on offense. And then getting pressure with 4 is huge. And obviously stopping the run helps you, get pressure too, because you put the other team at a disadvantage in terms of where they're at in comparison to the sticks. So, I think getting better players on the defensive line, considering you're going to lose your top players, and it wasn't good enough in the biggest game, is something, really to look at. The secondary ties in there. I think getting Rod Moore back would be huge, but it's just developing the offense. Like, next year, it's not going to be that young of an offense anymore. That can't really be a crutch. And so they've got to figure that part out. Obviously clean up the special teams, but it seems like they're on their way to doing that. But to me, I mean, I just been so disappointed with the offense all season long. And I think it needs to take a major stride. And I think it can with the talent that they have, but it actually needs to come together. And that's one of the things that's going to suck about this offseason is you just have to wait and see how it comes together, because you just won't know for so many months. But they got to do something to make sure the offense is much, much better next season.
I do think one of the major things, well, 2 of the major things. One, you had to shore up the special teams. I think you've done that. I think you need to shore up your defensive back play a little bit more, like we said. And the hire of Kerry Coombs has the chance to do both of those things. So I think a lot of it is they're going to have to make big improvements internally. You're going to get your impact guys out of the portal, but how do you, offensive and defensive lines? I think we've seen that you can't just easy bake that via the portal.
Right.
Michigan's offensive line, I think, is the biggest key to all of it. So how do you get those guys better? I think that you found some young answers. You're going to get a few more guys in the mix for next year, but I think they probably need to go get a starting caliber interior lineman, whether it be at center or guard. Depends on what they want to do with Jake Guarnera. We're going to take 2 more here. This one's from Wolverine Casual, who asked, we know Michigan extended Dusty May last year. How solid is that contract in preventing Dusty May from leaving? How do we lock him up for the next decade?
He doesn't want to go anywhere. I think if he goes anywhere next, it'll be the NBA. And I talked about that today on the message board. This guy, I think, would win anywhere. He's one of those few guys that I think would relate really well to the NBA players, in addition to being such a basketball junkie that he would be successful there too. So I've said it many times. I would lock him up right now with a contract and say, what would it take, to make you happy so that you're not poached? It's unbelievable how good he is, in my opinion. And there will be some ups and downs, but there's not a coach in the country that I would trade him for. So do I think he would leave for another college position? No. And I haven't really done any digging into it to see if he's interested in the NBA, but would that stun you guys at all?
No.
One day, maybe,
Right.
kind of similar to Beeline wanted to take that challenge. Obviously, he follows it closely. I could see a worry being like a Bo Schembechler, Texas A&M type of situation where somebody's just throwing a ton of money at you. Could it be Kentucky next offseason where they say we'll pay you $12 million a year or something like that, and you're going to have unlimited NIL resources? Obviously, things are not going well right now with one of their own, Mark Pope. So, like something like that would worry me, or the NBA. To your point, the buyout, it looks like it's fairly. I'm trying to figure out all these ads on the Free Press here, but I think it goes down by $2 million every year. Looking at his contract, I mean, I think if somebody really wanted him, the two scenarios that I mentioned there, another blue blood type of program in college or the NBA, they'd be willing to pay it. So, I would maybe give him a raise and bump that up. But the NBA thing is something maybe you can't prevent. But at the very least, I mean, you got to always one of your jobs is the athletic director is acquiring talent, especially for the biggest jobs like head football coach, head basketball coach, and keeping that talent here. That's just as important. So you always kind of got to be guarding against potential poachers.
I was hoping to come out of this feeling more confident, and you brought up the athletic director's history of not bringing in elite talent and his inability to retain it. So great on that front.
Here, but
he is here.
At least he's here.
I hope he stays. He's a guy that he's a force of nature where wherever he goes, he's going to completely crank up and raise the level of competitiveness and that outfit has. So, if you're a Michigan fan that wants Dusty May to stay, you better keep packing out Chrysler Center. I mean, I wasn't at the game Saturday. The atmosphere looked crazy for the Rutgers game. I think tomorrow night against Villanova, going to be even crazier. And we're starting to see more and more sellouts. And, it's a basketball school again, I guess. Last one here from Jacob Sherba, our buddy. He says, from Sharon's press conference comments today on Chip Lindsey having full autonomy over the offense. He says, do you think this is indicative of a lack of genuine introspection or just some coach speak to keep the appearance that all is well and harmonious inside the building while things actually get ironed out?
I don't take much of what's said at press conferences at face value when it comes to things like that. I just know what I've experienced watching football with my own eyes. I saw a lot of Chip Lindsey offense when he was hired. We went back and watched several games. Never saw him throw 5 times and a half ever. Never saw them shut it down in different games like they did this year to rely completely on the run. So do I think that there is more to it with Sharon Moore's influence? I absolutely do. And it doesn't bother me, honestly, as long as it works, but it didn't in the 3 biggest games of the year. So I would rather Sharon be a little bit more hands off with it, frankly, but it's his call, and ultimately it's going to decide his fate here.
It's his call to give them full autonomy too. If this is what they want, like it's ultimately everything is kind of your decision. So let's say he said to just do what you want with the offense, and if Chip Lindsey does that, it's still kind of your call because you delegated it. But it's like I think that he's not calling the plays, but probably going into a game or going into the season, he tells the staff what they want it to look like. I've thought that really since the Oklahoma game this year. So, it's kind of the way it is when you have an offensive-minded head coach. I would imagine, Jim Harbaugh did similar with Sharon Moore. I mean, Jim Harbaugh probably better coach than Sharon Moore. I don't think that's a hot take. So, I guess you have to factor that part of it into it as well. But yeah, I think the semantics of that it's probably accurate, the words he said, but obviously the influence is kind of another thing that probably you can't really measure or calculate. And this is obviously just me speculating, but I've thought that for a while.
Well, and he says that he goes to help where needed. The play calling and the identity of the offense, I don't think there's help needed there. I think there's help needed in the trenches, which is where Jerome Moore cut his teeth with this program. So we'll see. We'll have to take into consideration like what maybe it looks different next year with better infrastructure, better line play, better playmakers. I think the biggest jump that Bryce Underwood will make in his career is from this season to the next one. So it's incredibly important to start ironing out what you want that to look like. But he can try to win Harbaugh's way, but he's not Jim Harbaugh. That's probably the mildest take that's ever been uttered on this podcast. He's not the coach that Jim Harbaugh was. So we'll see where it goes. But that's going to do it for us tonight. A lot of great questions, a lot of great conversation here on a Monday. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more from the Wolverine. You can join the Wolverine for $1 today. Just head on over to our website. That's going to get you onto the message board. It's going to get you behind the paywall. It's going to get you access to asking some of these questions that we take on the show. So take advantage of the $1 to join deal today. For Chris Ballas, for Clayton Safey, for our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you again next time.